and I want to keep them a little separate, but relate them. And so a little review. So what we've done so far is looked at elasticity of demand, or otherwise put, demand elasticity. And E sub D greater than 1 equals elastic. E sub D equal to 1, unit elastic. And I know we just wrote this, but this is going to be helpful for us to compare different types of elasticity. If elasticity of demand is less than 1, inelastic. And then why does this matter? It matters because correspondingly, if E sub D less than 1, you're going to raise your price. And in doing so, raising your price leads to, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something I did in macroeconomics. I got you, Jack, I hear you. I'm going to do double-lined arrow. So there's an arrow, but with 2 lines. And for me, this represents that this causes something. What does it cause? What should I put right here? That if your elasticity demand is less than 1, meaning you have inelastic demand, if you raise your price, what's the point? What do you get? Yeah, so total revenue increases. So I'm going to put TR up arrow. Then going up in terms of what's above, in terms of the definitions, if E sub D equals 1, then max TR. We've maximized our revenue. And then if E sub D is greater than 1, price what? In order to get higher total revenue, what do I need to put here? What do you do with your price? To increase your total revenue, in this case, if you have elastic demand, I mean, people feel like they have lots of substitutes, and so you're trying to get them to think of your product to buy, you lower the price there. So this is just one measure of elasticity. So there's one I won't teach you in this class called supply elasticity, but I'm going to teach you 2 more today. And so the other 2 are cross price elasticity and then income elasticity. And so what these relate to is, how do people's buying habits change if their income changes? So what's the response of income changes to demand? And then what's the response to changes of another product? So cross price means what happens to demand for my product if another product's price changes? And so now let's define these. So here, E sub, not D, because it's a different coefficient. This coefficient is E sub XY. And XY stand for 2 different products. E sub D means the elasticity of demand, so it's the price of one product and the demand for that product. This is the price of one product and the demand for another product. So this is a little bit more involved and a little more complicated to explain. So here you're looking at the percentage change in the price of, let's say, product X, and then the resulting percentage change in the, oh, and I need to move these the other way around. So it's the percentage change in one product and the percentage change in price in one product and the percentage change in quantity of the other product. So note what's really key here is this isn't percentage change in price and the percentage change in quantity of the same product. X and Y represent two different products. And so let's think this through logically. E sub xy equals, and let's do an example here. So if I have an increase in the price and then an increase, a percentage increase in the quantity of another, let me just finish these notes and let me explain their significance. Or mathematically the same would be if I have a decrease in the price of one product and then a decrease in demand for the other product. Note that if you have two values in the numerator and the denominator that are positive, or two values in the numerator and the denominator that are negative, then your coefficient is going to come out to be positive. And so this would be like two different products where the price increases in one, so you go to another. So think of this as coffee and Red Bull, to use the examples I used when we were learning about determinants. So note here, if the price of Red Bull goes up, and so remember what I said about complements and substitutes, exaggerate this. If the price of Red Bull goes up to $1,000 per can, then demand for coffee will increase. Or if the price of Red Bull goes down to free, so zero, negative, and then if that happens, note, if everyone's getting Red Bull for free, no doubt the demand, the quantity demanded of coffee will go down. So in other words, these two products are what to one another? Tell me in the chat box if the price of one goes up, so you go to the other. These would be substitutes in this case, right? You substitute Red Bull for coffee or coffee for Red Bull because, remember that exaggeration. There are two things that do the same thing. They get you hyped up, right? Get you caffeinated. And so if the price of one goes up, then people are going to switch to the other one. It's called the substitution effect. So if you get a coefficient that is positive here, these are substitutes. We'll call them substitute goods. Now let's do another example, because obviously there's something else about two products relating to each other that we've learned. And so if this works out differently in the sense that, so let's recreate these two. Anybody know what that line is that divides, the dividing line? What, is there a name for this thing? This line right here? Does anybody know? So if there's a negative and a positive, negative in the denominator, positive in the numerator, or the opposite, numerator is negative, denominator is positive, let's think this one through. So again, I'll give you an example. And by the way, mathematically, if either you're, as we were looking at earlier when we were looking at where you're putting your Q1 or Q2 or P1 or P2, didn't matter because either you had a positive in your numerator and a negative in your denominator, or vice versa, the opposite, you will always get a negative value. And so here, imagine if we're talking about coffee and creamer. People like to complement their coffee with creamer. I don't, but others do. And so remember, my advice to you is exaggerate. So if creamer goes up to $100, then of course, some people who need creamer in their coffee just aren't going to be able to afford coffee, and so coffee demand will go down. Or creamer is being given away for free. If creamer is being given away for free, then people who like creamer with their coffee are going to buy more coffee. You've got a positive in the numerator. Notice in both cases here, the percentage change in price, and the percentage change in quantity, if one or the other is negative, the other is the opposite, you're going to get that these are what? What type of goods are these? Yeah, good, Francisco. These are complementary goods. So I want to give you one caveat, which means one detail that I want to make clear in this exercise I'm going to have you do. Let's do a number line. Let's make some tick marks, one right in the middle, one on either side of the arrow, and then ones inside that aren't going to be perfectly correct in terms of their placement, but you'll get the idea here. Right there in that middle, put a 0. So here's a number line looking at towards the negative side. So over here, I'm going to put -1. And over here, I'm going to put 1. So what I want to stipulate is that if your coefficient, if the number you get in this cross price elasticity exercise is between 0.1 or -0.1. I have to move that a little bit. So if it's in between those two lines, so I'm going to draw another double arrow line right down here. If it's between those two, if the coefficient comes in so small that it's positive, but it's 0.1 or less. And if it's negative, it's -0.1 or more up to 0, then we're going to call these something different. We're simply going to say they're independent goods. So I'm going to put if this, then independent. That coefficient is so small that you really can't make a determination that these two products are complementary or substitute. The coefficient just isn't moving enough. There isn't enough responsivity to price change. In other words, there isn't enough elasticity. There isn't as much of a reaction. So we can't really document that that's a complement or a substitute. So I'm going to come back to this in a second and have us practice. The other one I just want you to know that relates to our determinants of demand would relate. So try to remember about income. Remember, there are two types of goods. What kind of goods are there? There are goods that we buy more when we get more income, but there are also goods that we buy less of when we get more income. What were those called? Normal, not generic, normal. Remember we talked about Top Ramen and mac and cheese. Yeah, normal, good Daisy, normal and inferior. So E sub I equals, so now let's do another formula that draws out what this relationship is. So I here stands for income. And here we're looking at the percentage change in the quantity people demand, Q sub D, divided by the percentage change in income. And so the response to income is going to give us a different sign for this coefficient. And so let's do something similar here. If E sub I is one of two things. So again, let's make two of these, what I'm going to call dividing lines. So think this through with me. If your income goes up, so I'm going to put a plus sign. So in the denominator, change in income, if it's positive, it increases, and then you buy more of that thing. So things you buy more of as you make more money, or as you lose income, you buy less of. Which of those two types, and in both cases, let me finish this, sorry. Both of those cases, if you have, oh, Michael, thank you. Vinculum. Vinculum? Can you say it for us, Michael, if you know?
I just Googled it.
Vinculum. You have to learn how to pronounce it, otherwise I've never heard that in my life. I really appreciate that.
Me neither. I think you
Okay,
got
so if you buy more of something, vinculum, it feels funny. I'm going to say dividing line for today, and I'll come circle back. What type of good is this? What are these kinds of goods that you buy more of when your income goes up? When there's a positive coefficient for income elasticity, this is no. So remember, now we're talking about something completely different. This is a normal good. And this is exactly why I do this in 3 stages here. Because notice, complementary is that middle item, right? It's positive or negative, tells you whether something's a substitute or a complement. But then over here for income elasticity, tells you something very different. It tells you what's the responsivity of demand to income changes. And so for that, we know there are 2 different types of goods, the normal good and the inferior good. And so let's just do an example here. Let's do steak. No, you're good. You're good. Steak and income. And let's do a vinculum. Do a vinculum between the 2. And so note here, where you have an increase in income, a lot of you said when you graduate and make good money, you're going to have more steak for dinner. And so that positive in the numerator and denominator gives you a positive coefficient that tells you that that's a normal good. Now let's do something similar here. E sub I equals, and in this case, either the numerator or denominator are positive. So if your income increases, right, the denominator's income, and the quantity you demand, our numerator, decreases, notice that's a negative relationship. Or if your income decreases and you buy more of that product, notice that that's going to yield you a negative. So if the coefficient's negative, that's going to be something like, let's do top ramen, and then income, and then a vinculum. So if your income increases, I asked you, what is it that you're going to buy less of when you make more money? Many of you said ramen. And so note, the denominator will be positive, but the numerator will be negative. Note that there, that gives you a negative, which tells you that this is an inferior good. Something you buy less of when you make more money or more of when you make less money. Now, what are all these different things together? So let me do this. How do I do another open? I'm gonna, if you would, write in your notes, I'm gonna pack a bunch of information here. I call this 1 E sub D equals 0.5. 2 EXY, and I'll put negative 0.5. E sub XY equals negative 0.5. And then 3 E sub I equals negative 0.5. And then I'm going to do something, do those 3 things again, but do them with different signs. E sub D is equal to 10, 5, E sub XY equals 10, and then you got it, E sub I equals 10. So next to each one of those, what does that make each one of these products? Now, make sure you're going to the right column to make the right distinction about what those products are. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to talk with each other and help each other understand. And we're going to come back and then do one last exercise together. Okay, please accept this invitation. You're answering 1 through 6 together using the information in the notes. I'll call you back in just a minute. Okay, so note what you're wanting to do here, or needing to do, is then pair the coefficient with the proper type of elasticity that it describes. And so if we look at E sub D, a negative 0.5, remember it's always expressed in absolute value terms, and that is less than 1. So there, that's inelastic demand is the answer for number 1. But then that same number means something very different if you're measuring cross price elasticity. E sub xy means you're looking at the price change of one good and the reaction to that price change of one good with the quantity of another. And there, if you have negative, you've got a complementary good. So number 2 is a complementary good. And then that same number, number 3, if it's elasticity of income, it's measuring something completely different, which is the responsivity of a product's demand to the change in income of its consumer. And here, if you have a negative, then we know it's an inferior good. And so likewise on 4 through 6, same thing. We're looking at elasticity of demand. Greater than 1, we know it's elastic demand. Cross price elasticity, if it's positive, those two goods are substitute goods that are being measured. And then lastly, elasticity of income is equal to 10. That's a positive coefficient. And so that's a normal good. So the last thing I want us to do is go back to that total revenue test document and go to the second page. Here on the second page, I have A, B, and C. So at the very least, note down A, B, and C and answer 2 questions. But let me walk you through the first, and then I'm going to send you to groups. And I'm really hoping that when you're together, if you're not talking to one another, at least you're kind of calling out what your problems are, what your solutions are, and you're writing down all the steps to complete the answer so you can help explain it to one another. And so this, remember, if it's cross-price elasticities we just looked at, so let's add in our notes again, just to make it really clear to ourselves with this exercise. If it's cross-price elasticity, which this is asking for, cross elasticity of demand, which means the same thing. And remember, it's dealing with 2 goods who are either complements, substitutes, or independent. There it is. In our numerator and denominator, we have the percentage change in the quantity of Y, let's say, divided by the percentage change in price of X. So 2 different goods. Now percentage change, here's the formula. Formula is given to you right there. It's the new value minus the old value divided by the old value. And so what I'm going to say is new and old would be the first value would be old. The second value would be new. So first value there, $1 old. Second value, new. So we have to set up 2 percentage change formula. And so down below, make sure you're doing this in your notes so you can follow the same logic. In the numerator, I'm doing the percentage change in quantity. So again, that is new value minus old value over old value. Here is the quantity demanded for good A is 250 to 350. So I'll set this up like 250, let's see, new minus old, 350 minus 250, new minus old, divided by old, 250. So that's my numerator. My denominator is the percentage change in price, which is shown here. 1.1 minus 1, all of that divided by the old value, which is 1. So do that math. Oh, and that should have a 0 there, should it not? Oh. So this is equal to 100 divided by 250 and 0.1 divided by 1. And so what does that give us? $100 divided by 250 gives us 0.25. Oh, sorry. No. Yeah, sorry. 0.25. It's not the proper answer there. It's 0.4. 100 divided by 250 gives you 0.4. And then 0.1 divided by 1 is going to give us 0.1. And if you divide 0.4 by 1, by 0.1, that gives you 4. So the coefficient, so for A, right, coefficient, and the coefficient is 4. What does that mean? If this is cross price elasticity, what does that mean the relationship between good A and good B are? So we're looking at the quantity demanded of good A and the price change of good B. What does that 4 mean? Somebody tell me in the chat box. Yeah, that's those two goods are substitute goods. Good, Kristen, you got that. Now, use the same mathematical steps I just took to answer B and C. So remember, you either have a substitute good, you either have a complementary good, or you have the two goods are independent if that coefficient is so small that it's between 0.1 and negative 0.1. This is the last thing I want you to do today in your notes. I'm going to send you to groups so you can help each other understand. Please be good to one another and help one another finish this. And then when you're done, you're welcome to leave, and I'll see you next week. Make sure you do the writing assignment and the peer discussion, upload the notes, and right now I'll make sure I have the note upload available for you for today's notes.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Take care.